Welcome to Old Grump's Garage. Well, this episode of Old Grump's Garage, we've got a leaking transmission pan, and don't know the history of the transmission, but the fluid on the dipstick doesn't look like transmission fluid ought to look. So we're going to pull the pan, we're going to do a filter, and we're going to replace the fluid. Along the way, I'm going to show you a couple of tricks I've learned that'll make this just a little bit easier if you've got to do this at home in your shop. So we've pulled the pan. This is usually a kind of a balancing act with trying to get the fluid out without drowning in it, since there's not a drain plug in a Turbo 350 or a Turbo 400. What I do is I take the bolts out on three sides, loosen them up on the fourth side, and just kind of get one corner hanging where it begins to drain itself, and then slowly ease those last three bolts down and continue to let it hang a little further and a little further while it drains, and just try to contain it best as you can. My apologies if the audio in the last segment there was not very clear. It's currently a little over 92 degrees in the shop, and Georgia's kind of warm. In any event, I have used rags to clean the transmission pan out as good as I can. I've scraped off all the old gasket material off of this edge. Then I've taken brake clean and cleaned it again. I went ahead and cleaned up the outside because it was caked in mud of transmission fluid and old oil and everything else. And I think I'm going to give it the outside a coat of engine paint before we continue. So there's the transmission pan filter. You'll notice it's just put on with two straight screws. We're going to pull it off so we can change it. Okay, I promised tips. So when you open up your new filter, you're going to have a little gasket like this. Lay it on your filter, figure out the orientation. So before we get under the truck and start trying to get it aligned and the filter's moving around and the gasket's falling off, little tip I picked up from the Wizard, and I'll put a link to his channel in the description, but take you a little dab of super glue and just dab a little bit of super glue to hold this rascal in place until you get it bolted onto the truck. Little dab will do it. Don't need to get crazy, but just enough for it to stay in place. And like I say, figure out your orientation before you put the glue on so that you don't run into issues with this. Once you got it set in place and the glue on, all you need is a little something heavy to sit on the back side of that while it dries. So I'm going to flip that over real carefully and let it sit like that for about 5 minutes and let the glue dry. Like I told you earlier, I have cleaned all the gasket material off with a gasket scraper. If it doesn't clean up good, then the next thing we go to is a little buffing. So for cleaning up metal, I like these little, they're kind of like Scotch-Brite pads on the end of this little angle grinder, and I did a product review on this. It's on the channel. If you haven't seen it yet, make sure you check the channel and you'll see it there and you can read up on it. But this little guy will just clean this up right quick. All right, so we got him cleaned up nicely. We'll wipe him down again. Got a nice, smooth, clean surface. Now, again, that little emery cloth deal. Works real good on steel. I would not recommend it on aluminum. I think it'd get it too hot and probably begin to kind of cause you a warped surface. But it works great on steel. You don't want to push down, bear down on it any or anything like that. Just lightly cut off any remnants of the gasket material and call her good. All right, so we're going to do the same thing now, because a lot of times you get this gasket in there in the pan and you're wallering around and you're trying to get it in between the cross member and the transmission, and it gets squirrely and the gasket wants to come out and not stay in place. So again, figure out your orientation for your gasket. Get on there. It's your home. Don't you want to go to your home? You too good for your home? Go to your home. There you go. So you figure out your orientation. You see how it's not wanting to stay lined up on the holes and everything? So again, we're going to do our little trick the wizard showed us. This time we're going to take the super glue and we're just going to go down these ridges, because we're just wanting to hold it in place. We're not trying to make seal with this. We're just trying to temporarily hold it in place while we put it on the truck. So just a little bead down this ridge. Now to help us keep that gasket right where it belongs. All right. Now we're going to get this gasket back on here. Line it up. You see how hard it is to get it to stay in place right now? Think about trying to get that under the truck with it doing all this wiggling while you're trying to set it on the truck. Yeah. Now we're going to roll it over. Look through, you can make sure your bolt holes are still lining up. I can see a couple over here. Wiggle out. Back to your home. Come on. To your home. And then we're going to put something on that to hold it in place while it dries. How about ATF? Okay, so our super glue's dried, so our gasket's staying in place on the pan nicely now. We're ready to put it back on. Underneath the truck at the transmission, we've put the filter back on, and I've tightened those screws. Just snug them up nice and tight with a screwdriver, but don't get crazy and try to strip the heads out or anything like that. It's just a flat head screwdriver, so you know, a short nubby is what I typically use. Nice and tight, just don't get crazy. Okay, we got the pan back on. I have started all the bolts finger tight. And I'm gonna stress this again, and I know y'all probably getting tired of hearing this. Do not get crazy tightening these. They need to be tight, but they don't need to be put on so hard that you need an impact to get them off, because that'll just bend up the plate and cause you trouble. So run them down snug. Let you get the pan pulled all the way up in place. I'm not torquing them at this point, I'm just snugging them up so we don't get any gasket warp. Usually I try to get one on all four sides snugged up first. That kind of holds everything in place, and like I say, prevents your gasket from walking out on you. And then come back around and snug up the rest. And once they're all snugged up, we're going to tighten them, and we're going to do the old technique of the one hand tightening. We're not going to put two hands on here and try to torque it off the truck. And I'm going to torque in a kind of a X pattern across there. And then once you've done that, just walk around it. And there we are. We're ready to fill the transmission back up with fluid. Hey y'all, if you've made it this far, how about do me a favor and go ahead and click the like button and go ahead and subscribe there too. That way when you're on YouTube, if we posted a new video, it'll pop up in your feed and you can see it there and see if whatever the topic is we're working on this week is something of your interest. It helps us a whole lot to keep the channel going, and we greatly appreciate your support. We now return you to your regularly scheduled program. Alrighty, we've got a pan all torqued down. Let the truck back down, and we're going to fill the transmission with fluid. You can choose whatever compliant transmission fluid you choose to use. GM asked for GM Dextron, Dextron 2, Dextron 3, etc. for this transmission. I personally have chosen to use Mobil 1 synthetic ATF. You can make your own choices. And if you wonder if there's any significance to the color of the funnel, I have a long red funnel and a long black funnel, and I try to keep those separated by their usage, red being transmission and black being oil, since ATF is typically kind of a red color. Just kind of works in my head. So turbo hydromatic 350. I'm going to give it 4 quarts. We're going to get her hot and check our levels.